My name's Lucas, and for as long as I can remember, I've been walking in the shadow of my older brother, Brandon. I don't exactly enjoy admitting that, but it's the plain truth. My parents, Susan and Thomas, have always had a clear favorite, and spoiler alert, it's never been me. I'm not saying this to fish for pity or play the victim. I just want to tell my story because something happened recently that flipped my whole world upside down, and honestly, I need to get it off my chest. I grew up in a modest little house in a quiet neighborhood. We were comfortably middle class, nothing fancy, but we had food, a roof, and enough to get by. Still, there was always this invisible line dividing how my parents treated Brandon and me. From the time we were kids, he was the golden boy. If Brandon brought home an A, my mom would tape his report card to the fridge like it belonged in a museum. If I matched or even beat his grade, I'd get a quick good job before she changed the subject. When Brandon wanted a new toy, my parents would bend over backward to make it happen. If I asked for something, they'd sigh and tell me it wasn't in the budget, or that I should work for it myself. And it wasn't just about money or gifts. He was favored in every way possible. When it came time for college, there wasn't even a debate. My parents paid Brandon's full tuition at one of the most expensive private universities in the country. It's an investment in his future, my dad Thomas would say, while my mom nodded with pride. Brandon wanted to study business administration, and they spoke about him like he was destined to be the family's next big success story. Meanwhile, I was on my own. I'd dreamed of becoming an engineer, but when I asked for help with tuition, they looked at me like I'd just asked for a trip to Mars. "We can't afford it, Lucas," my mom said flatly. "You'll have to find a scholarship." And that was that. So, I worked. During the day, I waited tables at a local restaurant, and at night, I hit the books to keep my partial scholarship. Even with all that, it still wasn't enough. I ended up taking out student loans, debt that's still hanging over my head years later. Brandon, on the other hand, lived like life was an endless weekend. His bills paid, his time his own, spending his breaks on road trips or hanging out with friends. I could barely manage a few hours of sleep between work and classes. I don't want to sound ungrateful for what I had, but it's hard not to feel that tight, bitter knot in your stomach when your own parents make you feel like you're less. I tried to talk to them about it a few times, to understand why the gap was so obvious. "It's not that we love you any less, Lucas," my mom would tell me. "Brandon just needs more support. You're strong. You can handle things on your own." Instead of comforting me, those words just made me feel more isolated. Why did I have to be the strong one? Why didn't I deserve the same support? Still, I pushed through. I graduated with honors in engineering, something I'm proud of, but I also graduated with crushing debt. I landed a job as a junior engineer at a construction firm, but the paycheck barely covered my student loans, rent, and basic living costs. And yeah, I was still living at home, not by choice, but because I couldn't afford to move out. My parents charged me rent, something Brandon never had to deal with. "You're working now, Lucas. It's only fair that you contribute," they'd say. Meanwhile, Brandon, fresh out of college, was still lounging at home rent-free. Eventually, Brandon decided he wanted to start his own clothing brand, an urban streetwear store, as he called it. My parents were thrilled. They emptied their savings, the same ones that didn't exist when I begged for help with tuition, and handed it all to him. "It's a great opportunity for him," my dad said proudly. "Brandon's got vision. He's going places." I just stood there watching, wondering how they could be so blind. He had no business experience, no plan, just an idea he pulled out of thin air. The irony? A year earlier, I'd tried to launch a small engineering consulting firm. Nothing huge, just a small startup that could grow over time. I asked my parents for a small loan, about the same amount they spent on Brandon's weekend adventures. They shot me down instantly. "We don't see a future in that, Lucas," my mom said. "It's too risky. You should stick to your job." That one stung. Not just because they refused, but because they didn't even take a moment to listen. My parents never thought my dreams were worth taking seriously, and maybe that's why I started doing something a little ridiculous. I began buying lottery tickets. It started off as a joke, really. Just a small escape. A way to imagine a different life for a few minutes. Every week, I'd throw a few bucks at it, telling myself it was harmless fun. Deep down, though, it was more than that. It was a tiny act of hope. A way of saying to myself, maybe something good can still happen to me. Of course, my dad and Brandon loved to mock me. "You're throwing your money away, Lucas," Brandon would tease, flashing that smug grin. "The lottery's for losers." I'd just shrug and let it roll off my back, tucking my tickets away and roar like small, fragile dreams. As months rolled by, Brandon's business started crumbling. Not that it shocked me. I'd seen the warning signs from day one. The reckless spending, the friends he hired just because they were buddies, the impulsive decisions. My parents, who had emptied their savings into his venture, began to panic as the bills piled up and the debts grew. Meanwhile, I kept my head down, working, paying off my student loans, and covering the rent they still charged me. No one asked how I was doing. No one cared if I was exhausted or struggling. I just kept moving. Then one ordinary Friday night, everything changed. Like always, I stopped by the little corner store on my way home and bought a lottery ticket. I didn't expect much. I never did. But I liked the quiet moment of checking the numbers, just the faint hope that maybe, this one time, luck might finally choose me. That night, sitting alone in my room, I flipped on the TV for the live draw. The announcer started reading the numbers, one by one. 7, 14, 23, 42. I froze. My eyes flicked between the screen and the ticket in my hand. Once, twice, then again. Every single number matched. For a few seconds, I thought maybe I'd lost it, like I was imagining things after too many late nights. But no. I checked again, slowly, carefully. No mistakes, no hallucination. I had just won $3 million. I didn't scream. I didn't jump. I didn't even move. I just sat there staring at the ticket, my heart pounding in disbelief. It felt like the world had stopped spinning. For the first time in my entire life, I felt in control, like maybe fate had finally decided to throw me a bone. But I also knew one thing for sure. I couldn't tell anyone. Not yet. I didn't trust my parents or Brandon with this kind of not until everything was officially processed and the money was in. The next morning, I went straight to the lottery office to confirm 100% real. The staff congratulated me paperwork and told me the pay would arrive in about 2 to 4. They even gave me one of those oversized novelty checks with my name, the words $3,000 across it. We did a quick photo shoot. I smiled awkwardly, holding the check like it might disappear if I blinked. Then I drove home, still in a daze, trying to process the fact that my entire life had just changed. When I walked into the living room, parents and Brandon, all three of them turned toward me at once, and when they saw that huge check under my arm, their faces were priceless. My mom's eyes nearly popped out of her head. "What is that, Lucas?" she asked, half curious, half suspicious. I paused for a second, knowing full well that whatever I said next would change everything between us. "I won the lottery," I said calmly. $3 million. The silence that followed was so heavy it was almost suffocating. Then Brandon laughed nervously. "You? Seriously, Lucas?" But my parents didn't laugh. They just stared at me like I'd confessed to something shameful. "It's true," I said, holding out the giant check. And that's when all hell broke loose. My mom was the first to speak. "Lucas, this is wonderful. For the family," she said, already framing it as a collective victory. "You'll share it with us, of course. Brandon needs that money. His business is struggling." She went on, her tone turning more demanding by the second. "If you give him half, he can pay off his debts and get back on his feet." I just stood there, stunned. Half? After years of being ignored, underappreciated, and treated like an afterthought? Brandon nodded as if she'd just proposed the most reasonable idea in the world. "Yeah, man, it's only fair," he said. "We're family. You can't keep all that to yourself." I felt a laugh bubbling up but swallowed it down. "Fair?" I asked slowly, looking at each of them. "Since when do you care about what's fair?" I could feel years of pent-up frustration boiling over. "You didn't help me with college. You let me drown in student loans. You didn't believe in my business idea. You gave Brandon everything he ever wanted. And now that I finally earned something for myself, you want half of it?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not giving you anything." The room went ice cold. My dad, who'd been silent this whole time, finally stepped forward. His voice was low, but sharp. "Don't be selfish, Lucas. If you won't help your brother, then pack your things. We don't want ungrateful people in this house." Something in me snapped right then, but not in anger. In clarity. I took a breath, straightened up, and said, "Perfect. I'll leave. And don't worry, I won't be coming back." Then I walked away, feeling lighter than I ever had in my entire life. You never supported me. You never believed in me. But now that I've got something of my own, suddenly I'm a part of the family? Yeah. No thanks. The argument that followed was chaos. Years of resentment came spilling out all at once. I threw every buried truth at them. How they'd paid Brandon's full tuition while I worked double shifts just to afford books. How they drained their savings to fund his doomed business. And how they charged me rent while he got to live here for free. "It's always been him, hasn't it?" I said, voice shaking with anger. "It's always Brandon who mattered. He's the one who's worth something, and I'm just the one who's supposed to be strong, right? The one who gets by without help?" I took a step closer. "Well, I managed, and I'm not sharing any of it with you." My mom tried to cut in, insisting I was exaggerating, that they only ever wanted what was best for everyone. Brandon chimed in too, smirking like always. "You're just jealous, man. You've always been jealous." I didn't even bother responding. It wasn't worth it anymore. I went upstairs, locked myself in my room, and placed the oversized check on my desk. That big cardboard thing felt both ridiculous and symbolic. A piece of everything I'd earned by myself. I started planning my exit right then and there. I wasn't spending another night in that house. The next morning, I woke up early, ready to start looking for apartments. But when I turned to my desk, the check was gone. My stomach dropped. I rushed downstairs, and what I saw made my blood run cold. My parents and Brandon were sitting at the dining table, and in the middle of it were pieces of the check. Torn, crumpled, shredded into strips. Brandon had scissors in his hand. My mom was clutching a ripped piece. And my dad just stared at me with that cold, challenging glare. For a moment, I couldn't even process it. "What did you do?" I finally managed to say. My dad didn't flinch. My mom crossed her arms. Brandon leaned back, looking proud of himself. "We warned you, Lucas," my mom said flatly. "Since you refused to share, we decided to destroy your check. Now you've got nothing." Brandon snorted. "Yeah, what are you going to do without your little money now?" he said, waving the scissors like he'd just conquered something. And then, I laughed. I couldn't help it. It started as a chuckle, but soon I was laughing so hard I could barely breathe. My dad's eyes narrowed. "What's so funny? You think this is a joke?" That only made me laugh harder. My vision blurred from tears, and I had to lean on the wall to keep from collapsing. They all stared at me. Brandon looking confused now, my mom's face twisting with panic. "Why are you laughing?" she shouted. "We just destroyed your prize. Don't you understand? You're not getting a single cent." I wiped my eyes and finally caught my breath. "That check?" I said, pointing to the torn pieces on the table. "That check is worthless. It's just for photos. A big cardboard prop they hand out for publicity. The real money's already being processed. It'll be in my bank account in less than 2 weeks." The silence that followed was delicious. They all went pale at once, like the air had been sucked out of. Brandon dropped the scissors with a clatter, and my dad opened his mouth, but couldn't get a single word out. My mom was the first to speak, her voice trembling. "Lucas, that was just a joke. We didn't mean it. We were trying to teach you a lesson." "A lesson?" I repeated, my laughter dying instantly as anger took its place. I took a slow step forward. "What kind of lesson is that supposed to be? That I'll never mean anything to you unless I'm helping Brandon? That his failing business matters more than your own son?" I shook my head. "No, Mom, that wasn't a lesson. That was pure spite. And you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm done. I'm leaving this house, and I'm not looking back." Brandon jumped up, panic in his voice. "Lucas, come on, don't be like that. We're family. My business is drowning, man. If you could just help me out a little." "Selfish?" I snapped before he could finish. "You're calling me selfish? You mean after you all left me buried in debt? After you made me pay rent while you freeloaded for years? After Mom and Dad gave you every damn thing you wanted and left me with scraps? No, Brandon, I don't owe you anything. Not 1 cent. Not to you, and not to them." My dad stepped in, his voice booming with authority. That same voice he used when he wanted to shut everyone down. Lucas, calm yourself. We're your parents, and Brandon is your brother. You can't just turn your back on family. That money is a blessing, and you need to share it. Not a blessing for you, I cut in sharply. It's my blessing. I bought that ticket. I took that chance. You all laughed at me for it, remember? You called me a loser. You said I was wasting my money. I looked him straight in the eye. Well, look who's laughing now. I didn't give them a chance to answer. I turned and headed back upstairs, grabbed my backpack, tossed in a few clothes, my laptop, and the essentials. The few things I actually owned. I didn't need much. I'd been living with almost nothing my entire life, so it wasn't hard to pack up and go. As I zipped up my bag, I heard footsteps on the stairs. My mom appeared in the doorway, her eyes red and watery. Lucas, please, she whispered, stepping into the room. Don't do this. We're your family. You can't just walk away. Let's talk. We can fix this. I didn't even turn to face her. There's nothing to fix, I said quietly. You made it clear who you are, I said quietly. It was always Brandon. Always. When I needed help with college, you turned your backs on me. When I wanted to start my own business, you told me it wasn't worth the risk. But now that I have something, now that I finally made it on my own, I'm suddenly important? I shook my head. No, Mom. That time's over. I walked out of the room, down the stairs, and past the living area without even glancing at Brandon or my dad. Behind me, I could hear my mother shouting, calling me ungrateful, telling me I couldn't treat them that way. Brandon yelled something too, but I didn't care enough to catch the words. When I opened the front door and stepped outside, the cool air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I could actually breathe. The next few days crawled by. Waiting for the lottery deposit felt like waiting for a new life to start. Every morning, I'd check my bank account, half expecting disappointment, half hoping for freedom. In the meantime, I settled into my new place, a small, quiet apartment that finally felt like mine. I bought a cheap mattress, a little table, and a few essentials. That was enough. For the first time ever, I had space that no one else could control. No one to tell me how to live or who to be. Then one afternoon, the email came in. Your funds have been processed. My heart skipped a beat as I opened my account, and there it was. A number with more zeros than I'd ever seen in my life. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen, not quite believing I'd done it. I was free. The very first thing I did was pay off my student loan. Watching that balance hit zero felt like having a boulder lifted off my chest. After that, I let myself enjoy a few things I'd always wanted. A nice TV, a comfortable sofa, a new laptop. Nothing extravagant, just simple things that made life a little easier. I didn't want attention. I didn't want anyone to know I was a millionaire. I'd read too many stories about lottery winners who burned through their fortune in a year, and I had no intention of joining them. But, of course, my family couldn't leave it alone. Just a few days after I moved out, my mom called. I ignored it, but she left a voicemail anyway. Lucas, please, we need to talk. Brandon's business is collapsing. If we don't help him, it's going to go under. You have the means to save him. Don't turn your back on us. I listened, then deleted it. A day later, Brandon texted. Bro, don't be like that. I know you're mad, but we're family. Please, I'm begging you. Help me out. That one went straight to trash, too. A week later, my dad called. Out of curiosity, I picked up. His voice was calm, almost pleading. Lucas, listen. I know things got heated, but you can't just leave your brother hanging like this. His business is all he has left. If you don't help him, he's going to lose everything. I took a breath and said, And what about me, Dad? What about everything I lost because of you? I could feel my voice shaking, but I didn't stop. The years I worked myself to the bone. The times you made me feel like I'd never measure up. Like I didn't matter. There was silence on the line. Then I said it plainly. No, Dad. Brandon had his chances. He blew every single one. Now it's his turn to deal with the consequences. That's when his voice snapped. You're ungrateful, he barked, and hung up. I just sat there staring at the phone. Not angry. Just done. It was the same old story. The same script they'd used my whole life. If I didn't do what they wanted, I was the bad guy. But this time, it didn't bother me. I was finally free from needing their approval. That day, I blocked all their numbers and deleted every message. It wasn't easy. Part of me still carried the old guilt they'd drilled into me, the shame of saying no. But when I thought about everything they'd done, everything they hadn't done, I knew this was the right choice. I didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. Now, when I walk around my apartment, I sometimes stop by the window and look out over the city. There's this quiet peace I feel, something I'd never known before. Freedom. And it's not just about money. It's about finally realizing that I don't need their approval, or anyone's, that I am enough. The anger I used to feel has faded into calm. They gambled everything on Brandon and lost. I bet on myself, and I won. There's no going back.